Welcome to a very, very special holiday edition of the Sharp Football Show. It's different than what we do most days, but this is a different week than most weeks. It's week 17 of the NFL season. This is a Christmas week. We've got Christmas games on Netflix. The NFL has to make a buck. Otherwise, they'd be tending to one of those Salvation Army pails. They don't have enough money, so they got to make everybody pay for the Netflix games. But we got Christmas Day games on Christmas, and a lot of you guys are probably doing a lot of traveling, and so we wanted to get this out there a little bit early. So I'm actually recording this early on the morning, on Monday morning. We just saw the games on Sunday. We saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose late to the Dallas Cowboys last night. Got Monday Night Football on deck. We're going to be rolling through some of the biggest takeaways from Sunday's games and looking ahead to the NFL playoff picture as we only have 2 weeks left in the regular season. So that's what we're going to do on this show. And of course, we are not live. We are on tape over at YouTube. So hopefully you guys are used to following us over on YouTube as well. And all the people that have been on X, why don't you head over to YouTube and subscribe to our show over there, Sharp Football Analysis. Search for us over there. You're listening to us now. Give us a thumbs up, like the show. We try to deliver each and every week. We're going to talk about how we've been delivering from a financial perspective as well momentarily. But let's dive into the very first topic. I got to talk about Jayden Daniels and the Philadelphia Eagles game. If you're like me, you're a late night owl and you're watching the NFL games up until conclusion. And then while you're working on Sunday night after the games, you have on SVP and you have on the NFL Network and you're listening to all the late night clips. And seeing the end of that Commanders-Eagles game, I was reminded of what happened in an interview with Jalen Hurts and SVP following the game where they defeated the Washington Commanders earlier this season. This is a little how it started, how it's going type deal.
I wish you good health, most importantly, and good luck the rest of the way, okay?
Hey, Scott, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? You're a DMV guy, huh?
I mean, is this what we're going to do? Is this really what we're going to do? I mean, I'm okay. Hey, we'll see. Hey, we'll see you down here in a little bit. That's okay. No, I'm okay. Listen, no joke.
I was just asking, man.
No joke. You guys, everyone knows what you are. They're trying to build down here, but we look forward to seeing you in our neighborhood in a while. I know there'll be a lot of Philly fans in the building.
Yeah, I like DC.
Okay. I appreciate you, Jalen. Thanks so much, man. Be good.
All right.
Man comes out, puts on sunglasses, and heckling me on my show. That's okay.
You got to love SVP. That was a little strange from Jalen Hurts, but that's how it started. Here's how it was going.
Second and goal, 10 seconds. Daniels fires, end zone, touchdown! Jamison Crowder, preposterous, 5 turnovers, and the lead with seconds remaining.
So the Philadelphia Eagles come down to D.C. and Scott Van Pelt's team gets to extract a little revenge there after that first game. Now, this game was a crazy game. There's a lot of things that happened in this game, and I don't really know how much you can take away from it because of the fact that Jalen Hurts got knocked out with a concussion after, it was on the second drive. Kenny Pickett comes in, scores a touchdown very soon thereafter. The drive concludes 14-0. The Philadelphia Eagles have the lead. The Washington Commanders, though, they had 13 offensive drives and only punted twice. This Philadelphia Eagles defense, they've been smothering teams of late. Their defense gets teams off the field, gives the ball back to the offense, and then the offense just kind of drains the clock out of the game, wins the game late. Devonta Smith had that chance to win the game late. He dropped the ball, the Eagles kick a field goal, and then the Commanders drive 57 yards down the field, score that game-winning touchdown. The Commanders had 5 turnovers, 2 interceptions from Jayden Daniels, 3 fumbles, and the Eagles offense obviously fell off without Jalen Hurts. They still put up their points. Some of those came off of turnovers from the Commanders, obviously, but without Jalen Hurts, 62% of their set of downs, so a first down is a new set of downs, led to third down, 62%. That was 27th in the NFL last week. Prior to that, their line on the season, they were only at 49%. So they went all the way up to 62%. They averaged 7.5 yards to go on third down. They went 3 of 16 on third down, which is obviously terrible. So they weren't bypassing third downs as much. They were falling into a lot of third downs, and then they weren't converting on third downs. But one of the interesting takeaways that is something that you can utilize for the future is Dan Quinn's defense and the adjustments that they made at halftime. In the first half of this game, Saquon Barkley had 13 rushing attempts for 123 yards. In the second half, 16 rushing attempts for only 27 yards. The other interesting thing here, the Eagles chose to blitz Jaden Daniels on 27% of his dropbacks. That was their highest blitz rate since week 1 of the season. That was a game that the Green Bay Packers were playing in Brazil against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a mobile quarterback as well, Jordan Love. And Jordan Love and that Green Bay Packers offense ended up putting up a bunch of points. Now, some people will say it was the field conditions. Other people could argue that, Vic Fangio's defense tends to get better later on in the season. I wonder if he's going to adjust his thought process and his strategy here, blitzing these somewhat mobile pocket quarterbacks, because obviously we saw some success here for the Commanders offensively. And that was despite the fact that Terry McLaurin went under his receiving yards prop. That's one of the bets that we had. I want to say it was like 62 receiving yards. He only had 59. So it's pretty impressive. Jaden Daniels with limited receiving threats, and with Terry McLaurin not going over his yardage number even, was still able to put that point total on a very good Philadelphia Eagles defense. Great game. Jalen Hurts needs to get back healthy. Now this division is wide open because the Philadelphia Eagles dropped this game to DC. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Detroit Lions game against the Chicago Bears. Obviously a blowout. One of the things that we try to do here is get ahead of the market moves. And in this case, we were getting ahead on Jahmyr Gibbs, believing that he was going to be utilized in every which way possible now that David Montgomery is gone. And I do think that Ben Johnson is going to be taking some time to figure out the best way to incorporate Jahmyr Gibbs into this offense. But we incorporated him every which way onto our betting card. We bet his rushing yards over at 85.5. We bet some alt overs, which cashed at 100 plus. We bet his receiving yards over at 30.5, which cashed. We bet alt receiving yards over, which also cashed at 40. We also bet for this show on Friday. As you know, every single Friday I'm giving away 2 player props that I absolutely love from the longest player prop market. We bet Jahmyr Gibbs' longest completion over 13.5 yards. Cash that in the first quarter. Big completion for Jahmyr Gibbs. Might as well talk about now. That brings us on the longest props that I do at the end of the show. After a 2-0 week this week, we are now 12-2 over the last 7 weeks. We are now 22-9 this season. 71% free plays at the end of this show, giving away about 2 per week. Hopefully you believe like I do. That's pretty phenomenal. And we're giving those to you for free, putting cash into your pocket. Now we're giving you something else here. We're doing a Christmas special for you guys. Starting it today. We're going to run it through the next week, but you might as well get on it now because we've got games that are happening. We've got NFL games left and right all week long, multiple games on Christmas Day, which is Wednesday. We got Thursday football. We got Saturday. We got Sunday. We got Monday of next week as well. These games are all spread out. Plus, we got the bowl games. We're 3-1 on bowl releases so far. We're 1-0 on our only large release. We are now 38-9 in bowl games over the last 4 college football seasons. 38-9, that's 81% on bowl releases. So what are we doing for you? It's been a while. It's probably been like half a year almost since we've given you a weekly code to get on board for just 1 week. But it's Christmas time, and so we're doing it right now. Use the code that you see on your screen, SHOW80, SHOW80. You'll get 80% off our weekly all access package, which will deliver to you all of our NFL best bets, all of our detailed write-ups and analysis, all of our player props that we release, all of our college football bowls for the next week for basically $20. $20 is what the final price will be. Look, we gave you 2-0 last week on Friday, a couple of days ago. You bet $10 even on each of those. You won yourself about $20. Take those winnings, pay it forward, get on board for a weekly package with us here at Sharp Football Analysis. Just go to sharp.football and you can use code SHOW80 and get on board for 80% off, dropping the price down to about $20 for 7 days, all the way through till next Monday. Everything that we're sending out to subscribers, 100% everything that we're sending out to subscribers, NFL and college. It's a great time of year to be betting. Typically goes pretty well for us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Join us. Don't miss out on that. So getting back to the topic of the Detroit Lions, they utilized Jahmyr Gibbs a ton. It was a commanding box-to-wire win. But I want to call your attention to this one play, which you have seen by now. And the genesis of it, though, is the really incredible part. The genesis of how they came up with this play, in my opinion, is really incredible. So this is a creative trick play that they utilize where Jared Goff comes out from under center and basically acts like he's going to be falling to the ground or dropping the football, fumbling the ball to the ground. And it looks like Jahmyr Gibbs is diving to go recover it. But in reality, Jared Goff doesn't fumble it. He just pretends to fall down, spins around, shoots leak to tight end, who's cutting across from the right side of the screen to the left, and they go and score a touchdown. I want to pull up the clip of Jared Goff talking about this play after the game, because basically he said that this is a very good play for the scheme that the Chicago Bears play. But in order to sell it, Ben Johnson wanted Jared Goff to actually fumble the football. So pay attention to that part. He wanted Jared Goff to actually fumble the football. Let's roll.
Did that start? What was your reaction with that one down on paper for the first time? And Anson, you worked on it all week. That was the best you had run it in the game, actually. Can you just, what was the genesis of that?
We did work on it all week. We ran it probably 3 or 4 times through the week. And the genesis was that's a good play for that scheme. It is, but they're in tune with it on defense. That is a good play, and that it's hard to get that on them because those linebackers are so dang good at seeing it develop. So at first it started on Monday with Ben asking me if he thought I could actually fumble on purpose and pick it back up. I was like, I don't know about that, and we kind of got off that pretty quickly, and we're like, let's just pretend we're falling or pretend I'm fumbling and I'm holding on to the ball. And I think the part that Gibbs where he dives really sells the play. I'm only doing half of it, but it worked. It worked like a charm, and was nice to score there.
So what's interesting here is he's talking about that they actually wanted him to fumble the football. And so you're thinking, what in the world, why would he think that they should actually fumble the football? Is this something Ben Johnson is just creating in his mind here? No. As it turns out, it's no slight against Ben Johnson for actually using it in the game. That's incredible that he recalled this and went and used it. But this is actually something that accidentally happened for the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love last year, where Jordan Love takes the snap, actually fumbles the ball. The tight end is running wide, leak across the field, and just watch these two clips played side by side. And it's amazing how similar these two plays are. The Detroit Lions and Ben Johnson actually tried to recreate a mistake from the Green Bay Packers and recreate it to a T. And if Ben Johnson had his druthers, Jared Goff would have actually fumbled this ball. Go ahead and roll this. Now you can see in the top clip, Luke Musgrave, here it is. He actually fumbled it mistakenly. The running back dives down to go try to pick it up, and then he launches it on leak to a wide open tight end because all the coverage assignments from the linebackers are focused in the backfield. Nobody's picking up the tight end. And as we run this one more time through, I want you to pay close attention to the right side of the offensive line where these tight ends are lined up at the snap and how they're running leak across the field, and none of the linebackers stay with them. Watch this. Watch the right side of the offensive line here. See tight ends leak out there, right across on both clips. And the linebackers are focused on what's happening in the backfield. The safeties are as well. Nobody's paying attention to the tight end, and it turns into an easy touchdown. So to me, this is remarkable. Not because Ben Johnson created this play out of thin air, but because he's trying to copycat a mistake that had a ton of success and ended up using it. So kudos to Ben Johnson for replicating this in such a way. Look, the Detroit Lions now, this set a massive win for them. They're still in first place in the NFC standings, ready to get that first round bye, but it's not going to be easy. We're going to be talking about this. They have to go out to San Francisco next week and play the San Francisco 49ers, obviously a team that's reeling, but a team that is a solid team, nevertheless, has skillful players and a relatively decent coaching staff, although they need to make a bunch of improvements, especially down inside of the red zone due to the San Francisco 49ers. But that's going to be a big game, and Minnesota Vikings are breathing hot on their heels. We'll talk about the Minnesota Vikings momentarily. Detroit Lions still gave up a ton of yards to the Chicago Bears. What was it? Caleb Williams threw for 334 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the Detroit Lions defense still has its share of problems, allowing a ton of yards to the Chicago Bears. But the Detroit Lions answering any and all questions that people have had about how many games they had to play on the road, out in the elements, in the different varying weather conditions, right? They basically did not play outdoors at all until few weeks ago when they went to Green Bay. It was pouring down rain, and Jared Goff played tremendously well. Then they go and play in Chicago in freezing temperatures. And once again, Jared Goff plays tremendously well. So they're getting it done in the rain. They're getting it done in the cold. And they're maybe going to be locking up home field advantage where they won't have to worry about playing outdoors for the rest of the season because they go to the Super Bowl. That's a dome game as well, and all of their playoff games would be at home. So important for the Lions to win in San Francisco next week and lock up home field advantage. It's going to be an interesting path for them the rest of the way. But kudos to them for playing so well out in the elements. We know that Anthony Richardson has had his ups and downs, but I do want to talk for a moment about this win that the Indianapolis Colts had to continue their playoff hopes. Now, there's a very good chance that prior to next week's game that they play on Sunday, that their playoff hopes could be dashed. Because in order for them to remain alive in the playoff race, they need the Chargers to lose both their games, or they need the Denver Broncos to lose both their games. And both of those teams play on Saturday of this week. They play different opponents. They don't play one another. So there's a chance if both of those teams win, which the Chargers, I believe, are favored by 5.5 points over the New England Patriots. The Broncos are 3-point underdogs right now in Cincinnati. So if one of those teams loses, the Indianapolis Colts still have something to play for on Sunday. If both of those teams win, however, the Indianapolis Colts are not going to be able to make the playoffs. They're already not making they're not winning the division. That's locked up by the Houston Texans. So they're fighting for a wild card spot, which they might not get. But I think there's still a lot of questions about Anthony Richardson in the future of the Indianapolis Colts. Just because the Colts happen to be fighting for a wild card spot right now, and maybe, luck goes their way and they end up making the playoffs. There's so many questions about Anthony Richardson. And just to paint the picture here, this Colts offense was spearheaded by a dominant ground game this past week. They had 335 rushing yards. Jonathan Taylor had 218 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. They broke their team's franchise record of 299 yards, which was set week 16 of the 1985 season. That's how long ago. I mean, most teams are not breaking franchise rushing records in the year 2024 because teams are not running the football nearly as much now as they once were back in the day. Teams are passing the ball a lot more now. It's easier to pass the ball. Completions are easier to come by. The rules massively favor the passing game. And so usually we're seeing a lot more passing than we are rushing. That was not the case in this last game. In a must-win game for the Indianapolis Colts, forget the second half. We know that the Indianapolis Colts were up big at one point, and the Tennessee Titans came back and scratched and clawed and almost got back into this game. But in a massively important game for them, what did Shane Steichen do? He completely took the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands. He said, we are better off winning this game if you're not even passing the football for us. And so they go 21% pass on early downs in the first half. 21% pass. That's all they do. It seemed like they didn't want Anthony Richardson to throw the ball at all. Among 34 quarterbacks over the last month, so let's zoom out. Over the last month, Anthony Richardson ranks 32nd in EPA per dropback, 32nd in success rate, and 32nd in yards per carry. The only two quarterbacks worse than him are Drew Lock for the New York Giants and Jameis Winston for the Cleveland Browns. Those are the only quarterbacks that have been worse in EPA per attempt, yards per attempt, and success rate over the last 4 weeks. In addition, Anthony Richardson, 47% completion rate over the last 4 weeks. That's dead last in the NFL. It's worse than every other quarterback that qualified in the NFL, 34 out of 34. So, good on the Colts if they somehow make the playoffs, I guess. You got to figure out what you've got with Anthony Richardson. This is not a recipe for the future. You can't just come in here and run the football week in and week out and have your quarterback throw the ball on 21% of your early downs. You can't have a quarterback that's completing 47% of your passes. So, you happen to make the playoffs, great, but what are we really learning about Anthony Richardson? What are they going to do next year? I would sort of rather miss the playoffs, get a better draft pick, but figure out a little bit more about Anthony Richardson than what the Colts seem to be doing right now, which is trying to sneak into what's an unlikely odds of them getting the seventh place in the AFC, going on the road week 1 of the playoffs, losing that game. I guess go for it, go for the playoffs, but we're not learning enough about Anthony Richardson and what are they going to do this offseason with Anthony Richardson, because these numbers are absolutely horrific, worse than Drew Lock, worse than Jameis Winston in completion rate. What's the future for the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson? They're not figuring it out. They're taking the ball out of his hands. They don't trust him at all right now to try to win these big games. Very fascinating. Now let's pivot to a quarterback that made his first career start and got a win, and the team actually let him throw the ball a little bit. And this was Michael Penix with the Atlanta Falcons. This was a game that the Atlanta Falcons needed to win. It was a must-win game for them. And instead of taking the ball out of Michael Penix's hands, they put Penix in this game. They did not have to. They could have started Kirk Cousins. It was against the New York Giants, a game that they were going to probably win regardless. But they said, you know what? We don't believe Kirk can actually win us a playoff game or get us to the playoffs against some of the better teams. Let's get Michael Penix's feet wet here against the New York Giants at home. Let him get a victory, and then let's see what he can do following that. And I was very impressed by Michael Penix. In his first start, let's pop up his pass chart right now. In his first start, Penix targeted downfield in the first half, throwing 10-plus air yards on 44% of his pass attempts. That was almost 10% more than what Kirk Cousins has done this season. So he was aggressively pushing the ball deeper down the field than was Kirk Cousins so far this season. In the first half, he averaged 2.72 seconds time to throw, which obviously you need to hold the ball a little bit longer if you're going to push it down the field a little bit deeper, and averaged 8.6 air yards per attempt. Then when the team was up big, they said, hey, we don't need you to do that quite as much. Let's make your life a little bit easier. They leaned a little bit more on the run game, and they reduced his time to throw to 2.1 seconds and only 2.3 air yards per attempt in the second half. Penix was impressive under pressure as well. He did not take a single sack despite being pressured 14 times. That was 48% of his dropbacks. He was pressured. Did not take a negative sack. The one negative play that he had was absolutely ridiculous via Kyle Pitts. You can see that one red dot on the screen there, just short of 10 yards. I don't know. I posted the clip yesterday during the game on Twitter. We took the team total over for the Atlanta Falcons. I was buying the Atlanta Falcons with Michael Penix. I was fading the New York Giants. I did not think that they would be able to contribute much offensively. I did believe that the Atlanta Falcons would be able to dominate time of possession, field position, and put up points. And so that one play, I mean, the team total was 25.5, 26.5. We needed them to keep scoring. And that one play there right before halftime where it was a perfect pass right into Kyle Pitts' breadbasket. And the guy bobbles it, lets it go through his hands, and then tips it like a volleyball style right to a New York Giants defender who's standing at the goal line. It was one of the most absurd interceptions that I can remember on a perfectly thrown pass to just lay it out there and give it to the defender. We saw a number of interceptions over the past, like maybe it's 10 days of the NFL season where there were some great defensive plays, right? Where like there was a pass that was right to the offensive player. Defensive player rips it out of his hands and it becomes an interception as opposed to a completion. Great play by the defense. This was the exact opposite. This was a play that was right in Kyle Pitts' hands. The defensive player was not going to get it, did not tip the ball, did not touch the ball. And Kyle Pitts actually tips it to a guy who's standing 6 or 7 yards away, like right into his hands. Unbelievable. That's not the point. The point is, kudos to Michael Penix for playing a really good game here, his first game out. And the Atlanta Falcons need to keep winning. Thanks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing their game, the Atlanta Falcons are in perfect position to now win the NFC South. And I wouldn't mind if that were to happen, although I love Baker and Bucky Irving, and we got some futures on those guys that we're going to discuss at the end of the show. But certainly would love to see what Michael Penix is able to do here in the postseason, but they got to go out and win their next 2 games. All right, a couple quick hits here before we get into looking at the playoff seeds. Kevin O'Connell, what more can you say about the Minnesota Vikings led by Kevin O'Connell? He is now 25-9 in one-possession games, which is the second best in NFL history, minimum of 25 games coached. It's the second time in franchise history the Vikings have started 13-2 or better. Hasn't happened since 1998. And to be able to win so many of these close games, this used to be a lot of luck that was bouncing the Minnesota Vikings' way several years ago, and things were going well for them. But here, this is game plan specific. This is the team is playing extremely well. This is really creative offense by quarterback and Sam Darnold, who had obviously been written off by most of the teams in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell is calling really good plays, and he's coaching him up really well because the way that he's moving around the pocket and stepping up into the pocket and getting close to that line of scrimmage to push the ball down the field. This is an aggressive passing offense. They have a very high pass rate. You know, the Vikings could come in here and say, look, we got Sam Darnold. We need to be a little bit more cautious. Let's lean a little bit more on the run game, just like Shane Steichen's trying to do with Anthony Richardson. But no, they say, we're going to get you to pass the ball. We know when it's optimal to pass the football. We want you to be passing in these situations. They have a very high pass rate. Sam Darnold is playing out of his mind. And I always say it's very difficult to separate the play caller from the quarterback because usually speaking, they're either both good or they're both bad. And in this case, they're both good. So we don't need to try to figure out how much of the pie goes to Sam Darnold versus Kevin O'Connell. What we could say is both of these guys are really exceeding expectations. Both of them deserve all the compliments that they're receiving. Kevin O'Connell should be, in my opinion, coach of the year, just with the job that he's doing with Sam Darnold and having his team at 13-2 and in position to potentially fight for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC in a year that the NFC is doing extremely well. There are so many good teams in the NFC right now. Really, really commendable by Kevin O'Connell. On the other side, this is one where we've seen a lot better out of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but they just keep getting the job done. And here's a record. They have 14 wins while scoring 30 or fewer points. That is the most in NFL history. No team in NFL history, the last team that had 13 wins was the 1925 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. The 1925 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets had 13 wins that season, scoring less than 30 or fewer points. Now the Kansas City Chiefs have broken that record from 1925, 14 wins, scoring 30 or fewer points. It's a testament to Steve Spagnuolo and the defense. It's a testament to the Chiefs being able to get it done at the right time and figuring out how to just cross the finish line with a lead. They don't necessarily care about margin. They don't care about style points. Cross the finish line with a lead. Kudos to the Chiefs for, I guess, that record. I don't know that it's a great record to have, but anytime you're winning 14 games in a season and we still have 2 weeks left to go, that is a great record. So good on them. Speaking of an impressive young player, Brian Thomas Jr. Listen to this statistic. He had 9 catches for 132 yards and a touchdown, recorded his 7th game with 60-plus receiving yards and at least 1 touchdown. Only Pro Football Hall of Famer Randy Moss, prayers to Randy, he's fighting cancer, has had more such games as a rookie in the Super Bowl era. And that is not with like a great quarterback throwing him the football. That is with his most targets for Brian Thomas Jr. 59 targets this year have come from Mac Jones. 53 have come from Trevor Lawrence. We know that, I personally don't think Trevor Lawrence has lived up to his expectations, but certainly Mac Jones has fallen well short of his expectations. And despite having the vast majority of his targets from Mac Jones, you got Brian Thomas Jr. with this record now with Randy Moss. Really tremendous. He's got two more games to go to tie Randy Moss at 8 games with 60-plus receiving yards and at least 1 receiving touchdown as a rookie. So great job for him. Let's talk about Joe Burrow real quickly. They are winning their games and they're still staying alive, even though the odds are really stacked against them. Joe Burrow became the first player in NFL history to have 250-plus passing yards and 3-plus passing touchdowns in 7 consecutive games. 7 straight games. That is a feat for Joe Burrow. He's willing his team. He's putting his team on his back to march them into the postseason potentially. And I just mentioned a huge, huge game against the Denver Broncos this weekend. It's a big game for both of these teams. Denver needs the win. Cincinnati must win. So it's not a must win for Denver, but it's a must win for Cincy. It's a need to win for Denver. It's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one next weekend. With that said, let's dive into the playoff picture. All right, so let's stick with the AFC. Let's pop up the graphic here for the AFC playoff picture. The gray teams at the bottom, these are the teams that are eliminated. So the New York Jets were eliminated, Cleveland Browns, all these teams, we knew that they were eliminated. The only unfortunate part about the playoffs this year, in my opinion, or the last couple of weeks of the regular season, there aren't that many teams that have something to play for. There are so many teams that are just really bad this year, and they've already been eliminated. So you got the Indianapolis Colts. We talked about them before. They need to win their last 2 games. And because they're 2 games behind the Chargers and the Broncos, they need the Chargers or the Broncos, one of those 2 teams, to lose both of their games. You also still have technically alive Miami and Cincinnati. They need a variety of things to go their way, including 1 or 2 of those teams to lose all of their games as well. So difficult situation for all these 7 and 8 teams. But they're trying to leapfrog one of these 9 and 6 teams. And you see most of these other teams have things pretty well locked up. The Houston Texans don't have much to play for. The Kansas City Chiefs are in good position. Now, technically speaking, they still need to win this last game on Christmas Day against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would allow them to take off Week 18, and they already will have a bye week. So that'll give them 2 weeks of extra rest, whereas every single other team in the NFC will not have that bye week, and some of them will be playing for seeding purposes in Week 18. So some of these teams will have no weeks off. Others would be smart to try to rest their guys a little bit here in the final couple of games, if possible, if they've got things locked up, particularly Week 18, just so that you can kind of get that opportunity to be fresh as possible in the postseason. Let's look at the NFC picture now. And here we've got even fewer teams that are still technically alive for the playoffs. And both of these teams, once again, are 2 games behind the Green Bay Packers and the Washington Commanders. So you got 2 10-win teams with Green Bay Packers playing tonight. Most likely they're going to beat the New Orleans Saints. So that'll put them at 11 wins. So the only real team that's even potentially not locking things up is a Washington Commanders sitting at 10 wins. Now, if Atlanta drops their games and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can win theirs, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win the NFC South. The Atlanta Falcons will be out. They're not going to be able to make it as a wild card, so they would be out. So the NFC South, that's the big battle here between Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Which team's going to get in there? Washington still hasn't locked up a playoff berth yet. And then you got Seattle battling with the LA Rams. So there's a big contest there. Philadelphia lost their opportunity really to have that first overall draft pick. The first overall seed in the NFC. That was just a horrible loss to sustain. Now, of course, it was because Jalen Hurts went out. In my opinion, that was the only reason that they ended up losing that game. So bad luck on their part. But really competitive. You still got the first overall seed highly up in the air because the Minnesota Vikings are sitting there at 13-2, Detroit Lions sitting there at 13-2, Philadelphia Eagles sitting there at 12-3. It's going to be a fun race to the finish in this conference, but not really from a wild card perspective. It's just fun to see how these teams, from a seeding perspective, who's going to get the first overall seed in the NFC and get that first round bye, and then which of these teams are going to win their divisions, the NFC South, Tampa Bay or Atlanta, the NFC West, Seattle or LA Rams. Really interesting to see how that's going to go. And one more thing here before we go, I do want to mention, for those of you that were with us on our futures package, a lot of you buy the futures package and then you're sitting here buying the regular season package, so you're with us all the way, but let's pretend you just bought the futures package. The one fun thing about betting on futures is when you start seeing your accounts increase. You just log in one day and your account has a lot more money in it than it had the day before, and you don't think it was from the bets that you won the day before, but all of a sudden your account has more money. If you're subscribed to our futures, it's probably because you're cashing some of these futures tickets. So show a graphic right now of some of the teams that we bet on. These are in fact 100% of our team-based futures. We took the Lions over 10.5 wins, that cashed. We also took the Seahawks regular season wins over 7.5, that cashed. We took the San Francisco 49ers regular season wins under 11.5, that cashed. We have the New England Patriots alt under at 5.5, that cashed. Now, we still need the New England Patriots. They can't win both of their last two games. They've only got 3 wins right now. They're the worst team in the AFC right now, sitting at the 16th place team out of 16. But they got 3 wins. We need them to lose one more game, and then we cash the regular standard under on their regular season wins at 4.5. We bet earlier Tampa Bay Buccaneers not to make the playoffs, so we're going to need a little bit of help from the Atlanta Falcons there. The only one here that we lost right now that's for sure a loss is Pittsburgh Steelers. We faded them. We did not believe that Mike Tomlin against this schedule was going to win more than 8.5 games. Most people didn't believe that he was going to have a winning record with this schedule. And of course he did. Just continues to defy logic with how he gets continued success year in and year out. Already cashed the Jacksonville Jaguars alternate regular season wins under 9.5 as well. And the alternate Detroit Lions wins over 11.5, cash that as well. The only 3 that we've got pending here are Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs at plus 185, Kansas City to win the AFC at plus 350, and the Patriots to have the worst record. Now, it's unlikely the Patriots are going to have the worst record, but we got plus 320 on it, only risk 0.2 units. Kansas City Chiefs obviously are the leader to win the AFC, so that most likely is going to cash plus 350 ticket there, and hopefully we'll hit the Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs. So pretty solid value there. And what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins and only 1 loss right now on futures, with a couple of these others that are likely to win and a couple of the others, particularly long shots, that may not win. On the player prop market, I'll run through some of these real quick. Bijan Robinson cashed over his rushing touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., we talked about him earlier, over on his receiving touchdowns. Michael Pittman under on his receptions. Why? Because Anthony Richardson, as we discussed earlier, cannot complete passes, particularly wide receivers. Worst completion rate in the NFL over the last month. Cash that under, or we will cash that under. There's no way he's catching like 20-plus balls in the last 2 weeks of the season. Jacoby Brissett to play the first week 1 snap, cash that. Mike Williams, the New York Jets, we're going to win that. Receiving yards under, he's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Khalil Shakir, receptions over, cash that. Lamar Jackson, rushing yards over, cash that. The only one that we lost here was Rashard Bateman, receiving yards under. He's already gone over that. Now you got a couple others that we're probably going to lose. We're going to lose Dalton Kincaid's receiving yards over. We're going to lose Anthony Richardson rushing touchdowns over. I think he's got 5. He needs to get 3 in the last 2 weeks. That's probably unlikely. And Jaylen Warren rushing yards over. Probably going to lose that one as well. And the very last one that I got to tell you guys can root this one in for us, whether you're riding with us and you bet it with us or you're just going to be rooting for us. We bet Bucky Irving to have the most rushing yards of any rookie at 26-1 odds before the season. So we are riding Bucky. We are big Bucky Irving fans. Right now, he is leading all rookies in rushing yards. He is the favorite to win this. We just need him to get through these last couple of weeks and not lose ground to Jaden Daniels too much or anybody else come out of the pack here. So Bucky Irving, bring us home our 26-1 future. That's going to be a great New Year's present for everybody once that cashes. We have to wait till after week 18 to get that one into your accounts. But we did great on these player props right now in terms of the ones that are graded out finalized. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 on those as well. So your bank account or your accounts at these different sports books have been increasing thanks to the futures. Hopefully you guys are going to put those winnings to good use over this holiday season. Do something nice for yourself. Do something nice for the family. Reinvest it with us here. As I said, we've got our playoff special going for Christmas. $20, you get all of our plays for the next week. $20. We haven't done this for well over a month, maybe 2 months, doing a weekly special on this show. We've got it for you right now. Use show 80. You'll get everything, all of our NFL sides, totals, player props, detailed write-ups, analysis, DFS advice, plus all of our college football bowls, which, as I said, 3-1 so far this bowl season, 38-9 over the last 4 bowl seasons. Take the money that you won on futures, take the money that you've won on these longest completion props or longest reception props, all the things that we're doing there with the longest props. We are now 22-9 on these free plays on the show on Friday. With that said, let's wrap things up, guys. Wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas if you celebrate, a happy holiday season if you don't, but just make sure that you guys spend a lot of time with friends and family. We've got the NFL, obviously, on Christmas Day now, getting more involved in our lives over there on Netflix. So, gather around, watch those games. Hopefully they're entertaining, but hope that you guys stay safe, stay healthy. Best of luck with all the NFL games until that point in the college football bowls. It's a great time of year. And we'll see you guys on Friday for our normal Friday show. Friday, noon Eastern, live on X and on YouTube. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube show, Sharp Football Analysis. And we'll see you guys on Friday.
Right